Welcome everyone. I remember when we did a similar webinar last year in 2024 in January, we said, hey, AI or Gen AI is something that's really going to stick. It's not a theme that's going to pass by. It's a 1 year phenomenon. No, we said it's something transformational, and we are truly living in the AI age. So here we are back in 2025 doing another webinar on Gen AI. And, talking really about the 2 years since the start of the ChatGPT era in November 2022, and where do things stand today. So we're going to do a quick recap of 2024, how the year panned out, what are some of the key developments that we saw, where do we stand today in terms of AI Gen AI adoption. But more importantly, we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about what's in store for the future, right? What are the mega trends for 2025 specifically from an AI Gen AI standpoint that will help all of you, who are here in this webinar to plan, strategize, and create your own, motion as to how you want to deal with this juggernaut of AI, Gen AI. So let's get started. Quickly, next slide. 2024 recap. A lot of things happened in the world of AI, Gen AI. It's really hard to capture everything on one slide. I know, all of you can understand, right? Every week, things change on the AI, Gen AI side, but we tried to look at some of the most important high impact developments, and some of them are listed on this slide. First of all, May 2024, OpenAI's Her movement, GPT-4o. We are saying it the Her movement. We're talking about the famous movie, in 2013, where Scarlett Johansson provided the voice for an AI assistant. It was a huge hit, and the reason the GPT-4o, if some of you would have closely monitored this development, GPT-4o was really a step up to what OpenAI had done earlier. It was a multimodal, language model that they multimodal model that they launched. It was a voice interactive kind of a stuff, really mimicked human emotions. The emotional intelligence in this model was very high. So it was almost like a human-like AI interaction, which kind of created ripples in the AI world. So it was a huge development. June, NVIDIA became the world's most valuable company. Unless you are someone who is living under a rock, you would know that NVIDIA controls the GPU game. They have 80 to 90% of the market share, and GPUs are super critical to the Gen AI, LLM world. And NVIDIA briefly crossed, Apple to become the world's most valuable company. Although today, if we talk about today in March 2025, it's no longer the world's most valuable company. The stock price has come down, but in June, it became the most valuable company, riding on its very strong AI play, underpinned by the GPU, which is the competitive advantage it has. The next big development, EU AI Act. Some of you who are from the European geography, you would know the act was first tabled in the parliament in 2021. It was passed in the European Parliament in March of 2024, and it came into force in August 2024. Even today, not all things within the act have become a law. Most of it is going to come into full force in August of 2026. It's a phased implementation, but EU AI Act is one of the world's most comprehensive AI regulatory framework, regulating the development and usage of AI. It essentially talks about 2 or 3 things most important. One, the risk-related regulation or risk-based regulation, classifying all AI applications into different risk categories. Number 2, there's a huge focus on transparency and accountability, right? If there is a AI generated content, then the companies need to call it or label it as AI generated. If AI is being used in a high critical application, then there has to be check marks around explainability. So there's a huge focus on transparency and accountability. And third, there are huge hefty penalties, fines for non-compliance, can go up to 35 million euros or 7% of your company's revenues. That can be devastating. So it's a very, very strong, comprehensive framework that came into force in 2024. September, we saw the launch of Agent Force. The world is talking about agentic. We're going to talk about agentic in a short while, what our take on agentic is. But, it was again a big movement. Agent Force, one of the big bets from Salesforce. Already, we see a lot of implementation around those. So we're going to talk about that. December 2024, this was huge for the media industry, creative arts industry, the TV, films, advertisement industry. OpenAI launched Sora. Sora is its text to video, application, and earlier it was launched in few geographies, but now today, I think in February it's expanded to UK and European geographies as well. It's a whole different game altogether now. You can create videos from text, and that's kind of significantly impacting the media industry. Some of you would have known, Coca-Cola launched its last year, created its fully AI generated Christmas ad that created a lot of buzz, a lot of conversation in the marketplace, and this kind of sparking debates around how this should be looked at. Tyler Perry, he's one of the US media moguls. He was supposed to invest $800 million in expanding the studio. That was put on hold because of what Sora can do. So big ripple waves, because of Sora. And finally, DeepSeek. I don't think I need to talk about it. Start of the year in 2025, almost $1 trillion of rout in the US markets, especially in the tech stocks, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, everyone. And the only development behind it was DeepSeek, the model from China, claiming the model was developed at a minuscule of cost at which some of the Western giants had developed, the AI model. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about DeepSeek later in the deck. So a lot of new developments, interesting times, and our expectation, or at least the way we see in the market, there's going to be more as going forward in the future in 2025. But let's quickly check where the adoption is today. If we go to the next one, industries, see, a lot of people asked me in 2023, when the whole wave was starting, that is it just another fad, or it's gonna go, if I put it this way, the metaverse way. And I said, hey, look, it's not a fad. AI, Gen AI is here to stay, and there are two big reasons for it. One, there are real use cases, practical use cases that we can see for AI, Gen AI in the industry. And second, it's an industry-wide bet. So all the ecosystem players, be it the enterprises, be it the technology players, be it the IT service providers, everyone has come together to pour billions and billions of dollars, which we didn't see in the metaverse state. It means, this thing is real, and, they're going to make something out of it. So that's what we are seeing, in different industries. We have listed down the top industries where we see a lot of action. Do realize that some industries, the adoption level that we're calling out, it's not just based on the percentage or number of enterprises in this particular industry that have adopted it. It's more around, how much money are the enterprises spending in each of these industries. It's about, what is the maturity that they have reached. The adoption level is a function of multiple things. And that is the reason why the top three industries, BFSI, banking, financial services, insurance, HLS, healthcare and life sciences, and retail CPG, these three are the most active one, and also they kind of carry a lot of tech services budget that they're spending on AI and Gen AI. Now, there are a lot of use cases where AI, Gen AI is being applied. I don't want to talk about all of them. You will have the deck. In fact, there are a lot of reports we have published on each of the industries. I'll encourage you to go check our website. You can get to know all of that. But if I have to summarize, there are two or three things, from all the different use cases and things that we see. One, with any new automation kind of technology, right, it's always the case that productivity and enhancing user experience are the top priorities. And that's what we see with AI, Gen AI as well. Think of, use cases like virtual assistant for customer support. They are much more advanced, can do a lot of work, can be a additional support or augment the existing customer support service, operations team. So that's where we see a lot of action, productivity, and enhancing user experience. Second, there is also at this moment, there's a view of augmenting, the existing workforce with AI rather than completely eliminating certain tasks, because the technology is still maturing. There are fears around hallucinations, fears around responsibility and data privacy and all that stuff. And lastly, we do see targeted domain-specific use cases. Think of fraud detection and risk management, or automated financial analysis in BFSI, huge cases. Some enterprises are ahead of others, but we do see, many of those use cases coming up. So varied adoption, but productivity, user experience kind of, areas remain top priority. We go to the next one. See, the question today really is not about if I want to do AI. There hasn't been a single conversation I was being part of in the last 1 year where either the CIO teams or the CTO teams or CDO team said that, we are still evaluating AI. No, everyone understands that, right? Any senior leader that I talk to, they understand what AI can do. Probably, they have even more expectations from AI than what the ground reality is. But at the end of the day, they do realize that. So the question is not about if, the question is how I can scale AI. That's kind of, the big conversation today is. And there are really, three things that are impacting or hindering that scaling of AI. One, the biggest one, see, AI is not just a tool, a software that you say I'll purchase from the market and I'll deploy and voila, I have AI in my organization. There's a lot of things that go into scaling AI, and enterprises need to be ready to scale AI. And a big part of it is data. So 60% of the organization, we did a survey last year, 60% of the organization said, they lack that data readiness to scale AI. There is, the data is in a mess. The data architecture needs, modernization and other things. So wide scale scaling of AI is still a distant dream. They're making all efforts towards it, but it's kind of difficult right now. Second, there are budget constraints. Yes, there are a lot of shiny things to either around AI, and enterprises do believe that. But given the current macro environment, given how the economies are, uncertainty, one cannot have all the budget, all the resources they need, for scaling AI across the organization. So budgets are still a real constraint. And then very important governance concerns. More importantly, how will AI tool do? Will it hallucinate? Will it provide me the right outputs, or will it create something, which can land me in a mess? What about my data security? What about my data privacy? So all those governance concerns are still yet to be there. There are developments, there's progress that we have made, but those are real. So these are the kind of key challenges that we see, which is kind of hindering the adoption of AI at scale. But all things put aside, and if you go to the next one, see, one thing is very clear: Gen AI is here to stay. And we did a survey. We do this survey every year, key enterprise issues survey. And as you can see, Gen AI has moved to rank 1 in 2025. And the primary reason, I did a lot of conversations with a lot of enterprise IT tech stakeholders, and they said, hey, look, the reason why there is so much interest despite 2 years of us being into the Gen AI hype is Gen AI is not something which is merely meant for efficiency gains or optimizing an internal operations. A lot of people, especially senior stakeholders, CXOs, they have a genuine fear in their mind that if we do not adopt Gen AI, and what if my competitors are ahead of me, that can actually mean, I lose the competitive advantage. Gen AI has the power. Gen AI has, AI has that ability to provide you a competitive advantage, as against your competitors because of its widespread applications. And that is the real fear that a lot of people have, that if I am late to this game, if I am behind in adopting Gen AI, I can actually lose out to my competition. So Gen AI today is a board topic. It's a CXO topic. And as per our survey, it's the number one theme where, a lot of the spending is going to be in 2025. So with that, let's quickly, get into a poll, and we really wanted to ask our audience as well, from your organization standpoint, what is the percentage change in Gen AI budget are you going to see in 2025 over 2024? And we have 5 options, one, which is, it's a newly allocated budget, which means you are not doing anything in 2024, but there's a new budget for 2025. Second is there's going to be a slight increase. Third, there's going to be a significant increase, more than 10%. Third is stable budget, which is same as 2024 and 25. And last option is potential decrease from 2024. And as I said, see, it's really Gen AI is a board topic, really being driven from the top. The FOMO or the conundrum around, hey, look, we are going to lose a competitive advantage if we really don't invest in this technology or make our organization AI first. It's actually real. I've done a lot of conversations, and that fear is actually real. So let's see. I think we have good number of responses. So if you look at the results, right, and you can see it. majority, almost 80%, 80% of the respondents are saying either it's going to be a slight increase or it's going to be a significant increase. In fact, the most percentage of responders are in the significant increase category, which further validates, what we've been hearing and what we got to know from our survey. So thank you for the poll. Let's move forward. That was, the picture from the past, which is what happened in the last 1 year. As I said, we want to spend the bulk of our time, which is next 42 minutes, on talking about how do we see the future, how do we see 2025 panning out, right? And there are 4 key things we want to talk about. If you go to the next one, on the LLM side, a lot of developments. We talked about DeepSeek. The real question is, what does it mean for you? Are LLMs important areas for you to actually deeply study, or they're going to get commoditized and it will be all about applications, right? How do you look at the cost equation? We're going to talk about that. Second, AI under watch, the regulation part. We talked about EU AI Act. What's happening there and how should it impact your own AI strategy? We're going to talk about that. Third, big question or $1 million question, will AI going to take my job? We're going to share our perspectives. And finally, the agentic part, which is the key theme for 2025, we're going to share where does the market stand today and how do we see the 2025 landscape. So let's get going without wasting time in the models part. And let me invite my colleague Abhishek to take us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. So, the Gen AI story essentially started with LLMs, right? It's the centerpiece of the story. And if you think back to November 22, when we had GPT 3.5 launch and all the excitement that followed, and all the things that have happened since, Vishal kind of gave you a snapshot of some of the key highlights that have happened since then. But essentially, in the LLM space, we've seen the number of models explode, and we've also seen the capabilities significantly increase since then. And when we look at the space right now, as with all good analysts, we decided that the only way to look at it is to create a snappy acronym-based framework to describe it. So we came up with MIND. The first thing that we want to sort of touch on when it comes to looking at how the model landscape looks right now is the multimodality of it. If you think back, right, to ChatGPT 3.5, it was primarily a text-based model, as were some of the more the models which followed it somewhat after. But since then, we've had models which are able to process not just text, but audio, video, as well as image-based inputs. And they're able to generate those as outputs as well. In fact, Vishal earlier talked about Sora, for example. That's an example of a model which is able to take a text-based input and generate a video. So there's been a lot of innovation that we've seen on the modality of these models. Secondly, what we've seen is that while the initial models were more standalone, they were essentially an advanced search tool. Over time, what we've seen is that there has been a realization that these models are going to be increasingly consumed, at least in the beginning, through embedded stacks, through enterprise platforms. And we've seen these models become increasingly integrated into leading enterprise platforms across the board. And the level of integration and applications which are being built on these are constantly increasing. Now, if you think back to the initial models, these were all foundation models, right? And these were trained on a vast data set, but they were fairly generalized. So they could opine on a variety of issues, but they couldn't perhaps answer very specific technical questions because they didn't really have the knowledge base for that. And over time, what we've seen is that there has been a movement towards creating more and more specialized models, which are trained on very specific knowledge bases. And this is a hypothesis, but we expect this trend to accelerate. And this is probably going to sort of segue very nicely into some of the agentic related conversations that we have down the line. And finally, the diversity of the models from a language standpoint. To begin with, most of them were primarily English-based, but what we've seen over time is the original foundation models have, of course, incorporated more languages, but we have increasingly seen more and more regional language models pop up. And this is a very critical point because these models go beyond simply doing a word-to-word translation. When they're trained on a corpus of local language data, they're able to incorporate a lot of the cultural nuances and norms that underpin conversations in that cultural context. So in a way, you could even think of these models as the digital representation of the social psyche of a region. And these are critical to tearing down barriers and increasing accessibility. Now, while all of these developments have happened, as we move on to the next slide, what we see is that most of these, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Yeah. Now, while these developments have happened, most of the developments, both from the model development as well as the investment that's gone into multiple AI startups, is fairly concentrated. And in fact, that's been the norm for most of the time. So why is this? This is something that we started asking ourselves. There was an underlying assumption that underpinned this behavior. That assumption was, firstly, that those who were already in this game, who already had models, who had the know-how, were too far ahead of anybody else to catch up. So it wasn't really reasonable to invest in any other organization. And secondly, that if you wanted to get good at Gen AI, it needed billions of dollars to make a serious play. However, a lot of these assumptions got challenged in January of this year. So if you can go to the next slide, please. And as Vishal mentioned in his summary of 2024 and early 25, in Jan 25, we saw DeepSeek R1 come up. And it challenged some of these assumptions, because what did it tell us really? Firstly, it said that you could create a new organization, a new lab could create an LLM, which had comparable performance with some of the leading names in the industry. It showed that you didn't necessarily need the latest hardware to do so. It showed that AI innovation can happen on a budget. And perhaps in a more nuanced way, it also showed us that as AI development is taking place and we talk about features and capabilities and use cases, we shouldn't forget the geopolitics of it all. It told us that AI, and especially generative AI, is going to be a geopolitical hot button issue, and that adoption is going to be influenced by geopolitical factors. So what does all of this mean for you? So let's go to the next slide to summarize some of
And,
this.
and even before that, Abhishek, there are a few questions coming in. One of the interesting question I thought, I just ask on this slide, especially with DeepSeek, how do you see the cost equation for AI evolving, right? I mean, one of the things we heard in 2024, it came up in a lot of conversation that yes, there's a lot of interest in AI, but as enterprises really practically started adopting AI and going beyond the use cases, the cost conversation started to come up. So how do you see the cost equation for AI evolving?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we touched upon some elements of it when I was talking through DeepSeek and the reduced training costs and all that. But if you take a broader look at the story, right, you're very right. Last year, when a lot of the use cases were being experimented with and organizations were trying to scale them, they found that the scaling costs were getting out of hand. And what we saw as a response to that was there was a bunch of small language models that started coming out. The response was, hey, maybe if we reduce the number of parameters, we can meaningfully cut down on some of the training costs and the inferencing costs and so forth. And yes, that did do that to some extent. But what we realized was that over a period of time, if we look at this entire interval of time from then to now, the cost optimization related innovations have happened across the AI tech stack, right from the hardware layer to the model architectures, like for example, NVIDIA coming out with the N transform, the NGPT, which is a normalized transform, which is able to cut down training costs significantly by, I believe, 10 or 20x. Then there have been innovations on how to fine tune and distill models. So the innovations have happened across the tech stack. Some of this knowledge is, of course, available publicly. But what I expect is that as you see more and more adoption of generative AI happening, as organizations implement this through the tech stack, the AI cost management as a concept is going to become more and more crystallized. There are organizations that are going to start developing proprietary knowledge on how to do this optimization better. You'll find technology platforms that are coming up which will likely address some of these issues. So expect in the years to come, this AI cost management being carved out as a very distinct discipline, maybe analogous to FinOps, if you had to find a comparable example. All right, so the conclusion slide for the LLM piece, what does this mean for you? Firstly, sort of related to the cost conversation, it means that LLM in-house development is not as much of a pipe dream as maybe initially we thought it was. And so it revitalizes that debate between build versus buy. Perhaps in-house development is now viable. The second is that specialized models are going to start becoming more and more important. And I believe organizations themselves are going to start creating very local, specialized, domain-specific models of their own, perhaps in consort with certain technology and service partners. The third one is that if you look back to last year, there was a big performance gap between a lot of the open source models and the proprietary models. With DeepSeek, what we saw was that that gap has shrunk significantly. And this is also forcing a lot of the model developers to rethink their commercialization. So expect that this will significantly bring down costs. So this kind of relates to the first point as well, about forces at play that are incentivizing more and more in-house builds, which earlier perhaps seemed out of reach. And of course, as LLM adoption increases, the reverse of it is, well, not the reverse, but the consequence of that is you will have nefarious bad actors trying to exploit that. So you'll increasingly face more jailbreak attempts, more attempts to compromise these models using a variety of sophisticated techniques. So from an enterprise standpoint, as you elevate your tech stack with Gen AI tools and technologies, the cybersecurity protocols need to be evolved too, to ensure that your enterprise's data and digital security is maintained and future-proofed going forward. So that's it for the LLM piece and some of the key messages that you can sort of take with you. If we go to the next slide, we have a goodie for you guys, a sort of intellectual goodie, if you will. We came up with this report recently on foundation models. And as participants in this webinar, you of course get a complimentary copy of this. So please feel free to make use of that, explore the insights it has to offer, and let us know what you think. With that, I am going to move to the next section. I am getting frantic pings that I do need to move on. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. The next part of, well, we talked about LLMs as a critical piece of the AI story, but there are various other pieces, and perhaps none so important as the overall regulatory and sovereign landscape that underpins a lot of these AI conversations that are happening today. What we have seen increasingly is that different countries have started shaping and crafting their own action plans for how they will integrate Gen AI into their into industries within their sovereign territory, and how they will maintain competitiveness on a global scale in the days to come. These are some examples. It's not an exhaustive list, but within this, you will find that there are different flavors that exist. So for example, US is quite explicit in saying that it wants to maintain AI leadership. Germany says that, you know, a lot of our research goes into cutting edge Gen AI, but we are not the ones who create those applications. And so they are looking at it more from an application sovereignty, where they don't necessarily want to keep relying on US-based big tech. Saudi Arabia has for quite some time been looking to create LLMs that incorporate Arabic languages. With India, you would have, if you had followed the news recently, you would have seen that our government has said that they want to develop an India-based LLM, and they want to develop local chips. In the UK, they want to infuse AI into more public service endeavors. Again, these are just a few elements of it. But if you move to the next slide, the point I'll try to drive home here is that while these different AI action plans exist, what they finally translate to in terms of things, tangible things, is a fight between innovation and regulation. On one hand, these different countries will, of course, try to foster innovation within their shores, but on the other end of that, they also want to ensure that public safety is maintained in different ways. And if we look at the broader spectrum of different policies and incentives that have been curated to within this in this context, what we see is that there is broadly equal support for both sides of the equation. But of course, when you look at it from specific regions like EU or specific countries like the US, you will find that some sit on one side of the fence, whereas others sit on the other. EU tends to be a bit more regulation heavy, more conservative, whereas the US, especially under Trump, has decided to unshackle innovation by cutting down regulations aggressively. So what does this mean for you as organizations who are trying to traverse this regulatory soup related to generative AI? So we go to the next slide. Firstly, you can expect, as you might have guessed, that regulations are going to go up. There are some that have been put into force, like the EU AI Act. Expect more and more of these regulations to come up across the world. And as a result, you as an organization will have to make sure that you're staying attuned to these developments, making sure that you gauge how they're going to impact your business, adapt accordingly. The second is that the cost of compliance is going to go up. AI audits, compliance reporting, these are things that will increasingly become standard practice. And as a result, you will be required most likely to appoint dedicated leadership, get resources who are able to evolve your governance mandates to account for this, to make sure that your governance is future-proofed. Now, while the regulations are going to balloon, the expectation also is that the regulations will be fragmented. Different regions are going to have policies that don't necessarily align with those of other regions. And this is a bit problematic because as you look to scale AI at an enterprise level, you're essentially trying to, at least at the data layer, trying to integrate multiple data streams. So for multinational organizations, this can prove challenging if, because of data residency laws, you are not able to port data from one place to another. And so you'll have to figure out innovative ways to address these challenges. One thing that we are seeing, which is getting a lot of interest recently because of these reasons, is the concept of a data embassy. Simply put, think of it as the equivalent of an embassy of a country where instead of diplomats, your data resides. And the data is governed by the laws of whichever country's embassy it is, rather than the nation in which that embassy is hosted. UAE and India recently signed an agreement to explore a data embassy in India, in the Gift City. And I believe there are conversations going on presently between Singapore and India for the same purpose as well. And finally, in alignment with these national AI strategies, there will be dedicated budgets that are carved out from public money with very specific investment themes. So these pose significant opportunities for you as organizations to see if there are opportunities that align with your core business interest areas. That's it for the regulatory piece in general. Before I hand it over to Vishal, I'll have Vishal know that while we've been collecting all these questions, your section, Vishal, is the one that's most in demand. So I'm very jealous. We've had multiple questions on how exactly is GenAI going to affect my job? How's the impact on the talent model going to be? What does it mean for the talent market in general? So Vishal, all yours. You've got the favorite section. So here you go.
Yeah, no, thank you, Abhishek. Feel free to chip in. It's as I said in the beginning, it's a $1 million question. Everyone is asking these days, is GenAI going to take my job? And CEOs, famous people, celebrities across the world are talking about. We've given 2 quotes from Sundar Pichai and Mark Zuckerberg. They're already talking about how they are deploying agents, within their organization, especially for software development, code generation, that is helping them get a lot of efficiency, productivity, in some cases, even replacing some of those roles. So the big question, the big debate really today is, will AI kill jobs in the market? And see, frankly, I think a lot of you, who've been on the webinar, a lot of you can relate to it. This is not the first time we are having this conversation. It started in the Industrial Revolution, even before the Industrial Revolution, right? When we started having machines, and then we moved into the information age, a lot of technologies. More recently, 10, 15 years back, we had RPA, automation, and we had a similar debate. We had a similar question being come up, is RPA gonna kill jobs? And now we're having for Gen AI. So what has changed? I think one thing that is new is before Gen AI, a lot of the conversation was automation and technologies which were rule-based, which means you are coding those rules in the technology. So the argument was, transactional, simple tasks are likely to get automated, but creative tasks or high judgment tasks are likely, going to remain with human. That's something that technology can't touch. And that narrative changed with Gen AI. Gen AI, I spoke about Sora, right? It's kind of disrupting the entire media industry. A lot of creative tasks, right? Video generation, the audio generation, stuff like that. So the debate is, with Gen AI, it's even targeting the higher order, white collar, creative job. How to look at the impact on the talent or the talent models. Now, there are a few things I do want to say, and there are multiple school of thoughts in the market today. We have looked at everything. We have spoken to a lot of people. We've gathered a lot of data points, and see, as a culmination of all of that, here is my thoughts, right? One, see, if you look at if history is anything to go by, and I understand, history is not a foolproof, data point what's gonna happen in the future. But if history is anything to go by, any new technological advancement has only led to new jobs in the market. That is a truth. That is a fact. A lot of data points are there out there in the market. We're happy to share if you want to look at it. A lot of studies being done, but any new technological advancement in the past has led to, has not decreased the labor pool. It has only helped increase, the jobs in the market. That's a fact. That's a historical fact. But at the same time, and I'm gonna, go on a limb and say this, it's very clear, I don't want to kind of, based on all our conversations, I'm not gonna put a rosy picture. Is Gen AI gonna kill some jobs? Absolutely, yes. There are no two ways about it. It's already happening. But the bigger question is Gen AI gonna decrease or at a unprecedented scale? Is it gonna, kill the jobs at an unprecedented or a mass scale? Unlikely. That's going to be unlikely. Unlikely that it will happen. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, there will be some industries, there will be some job roles that are gonna get affected much more than others, right? But will Gen AI significantly or impact at a mass scale the entire labor market or job market, essentially reducing or killing the job market by 30, 40, 50, 60%? Unlikely that will happen. And why do I say that? There are two things. One, and very simply, I call it a kill, change, create. It's a little catchy and it's easy to talk about it. But any new technological advancement, if you look at it, and it's true for Gen AI, the impact it will have on the jobs is it's going to either kill some jobs, it's going to either create some new jobs. So kill jobs, think about, let's say, some, the transactional jobs, or let's say jobs which require very little human intervention, let's say, a customer service agent, the bots that we talk about. In some cases, that job can get killed. There can be new jobs that are being created. So think of prompt engineers or AI ethicists or responsible AI manager. There can be new jobs that are being created. But a big part of the impact because of Gen AI is what we're calling as a change part of it. Kill, change, create. Think of it as a bell curve, right? There will be some jobs that will be created, but it will be a small part of the market. There will be some jobs that will be created as new, again, a small part of the market. A big part of the Gen AI impact on the jobs and the labor force or the workforce is it is going to change for sure. And the reason is we are looking at an augmented AI workforce in the future. Most roles, we did a survey, most roles, from the very top, very senior to, the entry roles, most roles are gonna get impacted by AI. That is clear to us. We are not saying that those roles were gonna get killed. What we are saying is in a lot of those roles or situations, AI will become an augmentation, an addition to the human. That is the future that we definitely see. And that's been the statement that a lot of the leaders are also saying in tech companies, AI is not here to take over your job. AI is not going to kill most jobs in the market, but a person who is using AI will definitely take over the job of a person who is not using AI. AI is going to become synonymous to laptops that we use in a modern workplace. That is the extent of AI adoption. That's the extent of impact that AI is gonna have. That's one. Second, see, there is also argument that a lot of economists give. And I had a very, fun, engaging conversation with a lot of economists, we have in our circle, in our network. And the argument is, hey, look, we're talking about AI, automation, productivity. But there is also another conundrum, and it's best explained through this example. Ford Motor Company, and the example is from early 90s. Ford Motor Company had this model of cars called Ford Motor T. Now, in the early 90s, over a 6-year period, there was a massive increase in productivity in the sense that for each worker, the number of models created or built rose from 8 to 21. So it was almost a 3x increase, because of technology, automation, whatnot. 3x increase in per worker number of cars, models being created over a 6-year period. So that's the productivity part. But at the same time, because of this huge productivity and other things, the prices for those models decreased by more than half, from $900, something like that, to almost $450, $400. What that led to was massive adoption, increased demand for that, which further led to increased employment in the automobile industry. So you see what's happening. There is also the demand part. So the paradox is you might make certain things more productive, which becomes more accessible to certain people and enterprises because of cost or whatever reason. And that leads to greater demand and adoption. There are a lot of enterprises, a lot of people who couldn't afford it before, but now they can. And that can lead to much greater adoption and eventually fueling the employment in that particular industry. There are more such examples, but that's kind of something that I wanted to talk about. So net of it, it's going to be the bigger change. Yes, there will be killing of jobs. Yes, there will be creating of jobs, but the bigger change will be, the AI augmentation. That is definitely something that we see going to become a reality soon. And if we move to the next one, I think we don't need to spend too much time on the next one. There is a slide we have on how certain roles are getting diminished. Some roles are getting created in different industries and functions, just for you to kind of look through. You will have access to the deck, so you can check at it. But the parting messages on the talent piece, if you go to the next one, the parting messages or things, considerations for you. There are 3 or 4. One, all job, as I said, all job, most, or in fact, we are saying all here, but most job roles, even including the CEO, will be AI augmented. So prepare accordingly, because that will have an impact as to how you look at the cost arbitrage for talent. Second, we also expect, at least in the short term, that for the individual employee, the role mix will change meaningfully. So expect volatility in the talent market in the short term. As we said, there's going to be, this is a time where there's volatility in the market. A lot of people don't know. Everyone is predicting. There are different schools of thought, but one thing is for sure, it is highly likely that your role will change, in the sense that there you will have to work with AI agents and other things, and you will have to learn new skills, and you will move certain things to the agent, but there will be some things additional that you will pick up. So your role is likely going to get changed. So be open to it. Be proactive in learning those new skills. Third, AI value relation will be capped by employees. This is for the enterprises. You can, a lot of enterprises say we want to be AI first. It does not, AI first does not mean just picking up fancy AI software. You need to really invest in building an AI literate workforce. So investing in AI training programs will be critical. And it's something that we already see a lot of enterprises started doing. And finally, tenure-based hierarchies will diminish. It's a hypothesis and someone out in the future, but we believe that because AI augmented new hires, who are much junior in role or maybe freshers, they can take on complex tasks because of the augmentation through AI or agents. And that may create, or may lead to tenure-based hierarchies to diminish. So we will likely see more flat organizations, which are more skill-driven and AI integrated in the future. So changes in the talent market, absolutely yes. Will some roles will get killed? Absolutely yes. Will some roles, new roles will be created? Again, absolutely yes. But the big change is, the key message we are giving is, be prepared. Your role is likely going to change, because we are looking at a future colleague who's called an agent, who's going to be working with you more closely. And talking of agent, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Varshita, because agentic is what a lot of people want to talk about. So Varshita, over to you for agentic.
Thank you, Vishal. Hi, everyone. I think we have covered a lot of interesting things so far. What we have next is the new kid on the block, which is agentic AI. What we have realized so far is that while there's a lot of curiosity around agentic AI, it is matched by the level of confusion around agentic AI. And that is what we are here to address through this section. Now, before I jump into what is agentic AI, how is it going to impact you, let's talk about why agentic AI in the first place. Why do we need it? So to answer that question, I'll take you back to Gen AI. I think we are all aware of what Gen AI is. It's a form of artificial intelligence, and why it created a buzz was its ability to create new content, to generate ideas, to provide contextualized, personalized responses. While this was a major step in AI, what it lacked was the ability to take decisions and execute those decisions. And this is the very gap that agentic AI is here to fulfill. Talking about the definition of agentic AI is a technology that is focused on creating autonomous agents. These agents have the ability to act independently, to take decisions, and to achieve specific goals based on what the user has asked them to. So if you really want to envision it, you can imagine agentic AI to be a digital worker. It can do everything that a human can, but it's in a digital format. So that's your digital buddy for you. The difference between traditional technologies and agentic is that the traditional technologies primarily manage well-defined, repeatable tasks. You can take an example of data extraction, customer interactions, data analysis. Agentic AI, on the other hand, extends beyond these simple tasks. It moves to strategic problem solving in complex, uncertain, rapidly changing environments. How it does this is it adopts a goal-oriented approach and then develop strategies to achieve that goal. So for any goal that I give to agentic, it will not only identify that goal, it will divide that into tasks and then divide it into subtasks and then go about completing every one of those subtasks, ultimately achieving your end goal. One great thing about agentic is that it had the ability to self-learn and adapt with any change in its environment. I'll give you an example to explain that in more detail. Let's say I own a company responsible for consignment delivery from place A to B. And I have, let's say, 6 options at my disposal, 6 routes that I can take. And I've placed an agentic AI agent to figure out which is the best route for me to take. Let's say the agentic AI agent has done an analysis from a cost perspective, from a time perspective, from a traffic perspective, and it comes back to me and says, you should take route 1. Fair enough. I'll start working on route 1. Now, for some reason, one day route 1 is blocked for construction. What has happened now? The agent will proactively monitor this situation and reroute the shipments to other paths. As a human, I don't have to jump in and ask the agent to do so. So that results in one less thing on my plate, one less worry for me, and automatically assigning that task to an agent, which is very structured in a way. It's repetitive and it's not really adding any value to my work. I'm not generating revenue just from routing. It's a way to generate revenue for me. Can we shift to the next slide, please? Yeah. Coming to the provider landscape is highly diverse with multiple categories of providers jumping in to capitalize on this opportunity. I'll first talk about how are they entering this space and what are they bringing them with them. So, providers are launching an agentic AI offering in 2 ways. One is a pre-built templates and one is a custom builder. I'll first talk about a pre-built template. For pre-built templates, these are ready to be customized agents or templates that can just be picked up from these enterprise providers and deployed in your infrastructure. The benefit that these offer is that there's a speedy deployment because you don't have to build anything from scratch. It's just a plug and play model. The other is the agent builder. So in this, the enterprises can build their agent from scratch, right from setting the voice of the agent, to the tone of the agent, to its capability, to its features, what can it do, what can it not do, when does it need to escalate. And all this is done through a low-code, no-code interface, which makes it fairly easy to construct it even for non-technical users. The value proposition that agent custom builders offer enterprises is that they can customize an agent and build an agent that's very, very specific and very, very unique to their own requirements. So you don't have to adjust according to the agent, you adjust the agent according to your requirements. While all the providers offer either one or both the combination, each set of providers, right from big tech providers to pure play providers, they come with their own strengths and strengths that they offer to enterprises. For example, I'll talk about pure play providers. So these are the providers that are mostly startups which were launched with agentic AI in mind or have pivoted completely to agentic AI. These offer very, very high level of customizations. On the other hand, when I talk about big tech players, these have the advantage of scale at their end. So let's say an enterprise or a buyer has already deployed an ERP CRM system at their end and are looking for an integrated offering. Then the enterprise platforms are a very good bet for them. Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay. Now, the question that comes to mind is, how do you select the right providers? There's a slew of providers. There are multiple categories. Who is the right fit for you and how do you come to that right fit? To answer that question, we have developed a 2x2 matrix that helps enterprises identify the right tech provider. It is based on two particular criteria. One is ease of adoption and one is comprehensiveness of solution. Each criteria is again then subdivided into 4 sub-parameters that help enterprises evaluate the providers in an exhaustive manner. To explain this further, I'll talk about 2 scenarios. Let's take scenario 1. So scenario 1 is a large financial company who deals in personal and property loans. The company is required to process large amounts of data in a highly secure manner because it's dealing with a lot of data that's very, very personal, very, very unique to individuals and cannot be at risk of being exposed to the larger crowd. What it already has is a partnership with the hyperscalers for its data, cloud, and AI needs. So let's see, from a comprehensiveness of solution and from an ease of adoption, what do you think is the best option? So when I look at the comprehensiveness of solution, the company is actually looking for a solution or an agentic AI provider that has the ability to deliver a solution with progressively increasing levels of complexity as the magnitude of work increases. So what they're looking for is a provider that can scale rapidly as their business grows. It should also have very, very structured and robust security guardrails because that company is dealing with a lot of data that is very, very, that is PII actually, and they need to adhere to a lot of regulations to secure that. From an ease of adoption standpoint, I think the ideal partner would be a provider capable of rapid agentic AI development and deployment. Keeping these 2 things in mind, I think it makes a lot of sense for company A to partner with a hyperscaler, preferably the existing partner that can develop a solution on top of the existing infrastructure and scale the solution as per organizational needs. Coming to the second situation, let's talk about company B, which is very, very different from what company A was for us. Company A is a small logistics firm. It's a small logistics firm that operates a fleet of trucks or road-based transport. They're not very mature in leveraging automation, and there's a heavy reliance on manual workforce. See, there are varied differences in what the scenario 1 offers and what the scenario 2 offers, both in terms of the size of the organization itself, the requirements of the organization, and its capacity in itself. Now, talking about choosing the right partner for scenario 2, it has limited resources to invest, but it is looking for a very, very specialized solution at a low cost of investment so that it can generate appropriate ROI. In this case, it makes more sense for company B to actually partner with a pure player, a niche agentic AI provider in the logistics space specifically. So it should look at providers who are offering industry-specific solutions, and in this case, logistics solutions, so that it can help with the unique needs of the industry in itself. Next slide, please.
Varshita, quick one. We have only 3 minutes. If you can summarize quickly. This is really the last slide, right? If you can summarize quickly, that will be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, here, Now, while agentic AI has taken things by storm, the big question is, what are the trends that we are seeing in the market and what do they mean for you? What do you need to be prepared for? In order to keep pace with the industry plus the competition, you need to start your agentic AI journey with a very clear strategy. What it means is build a 6 to 12-month agentic AI roadmap, prioritizing process areas that you want to start with. Invest very thoughtfully, not only in capabilities, but also in partnerships, because agentic AI is not a journey that will be traversed alone. As you move from the identification stage where you're mapping out the process areas that you want to start with, to the implementation stage, one very important thing to focus on is your workforce. You need to realign your workforce so that they understand the importance of this technology and are embrace it rather than be threatened by it. This would also require realignment in the training needs of your workforce to ensure that there is no skill gap. In addition to that, start building trust and reliance in your employees by starting with a human in the loop approach for your workforce. What it does is, while agentic AI is doing its work, you keep a human workforce within the system so that it monitors what the agent is doing. The benefit is twofold. Firstly, you catch any errors that the agent might have made or any misalignments. Secondly, as the human is constantly monitoring what the agent does, it helps generate a level of trust in the agent, and then they embrace it faster and you can scale rapidly. Next slide. We'll come to a very, very quick poll. We have talked a lot about agentic, but what we want to know right now is sorry?
Yeah, I think let's do this, Varshita. We only have 1 minute left, so we can skip the poll. I think there are a lot of questions, we have only 1 minute, there are a lot of questions, but let me ask you one on agentic.
Okay, sure.
How should we, how should enterprises really look at the, pricing models, in the agentic AI space?
I think the most prevalent pricing models that we are seeing in this space are subscription-based, consumption-based, user-based, and outcome-based, in that order. For subscription, it's basically plan-based. You start with an individual plan, personal plans, then you move on to team plans, and then you move on to enterprise plans. For consumption-based, they are priced on the number of tasks. So it can be per conversation, per time unit, per action. Similarly, user-based is based on the number of users, and outcome is tied to the end result. At the present stage, what we are seeing is that subscription and consumption-based pricing take precedence. They are the two most common pricing methods that we are seeing. But going forward, we do expect a hybrid pricing model to come up and gain prominence.
Perfect. No, thank you, Varshita, and we are, right on top of time. So unfortunately, there are actually a lot of questions. We won't be able to take rest of them, but what we will request our audience is, make use of the, the report that is available, complimentary. Do download that, and feel free to reach out to us